They had inherited a lot of old rolling stock, a lot of old environments. They had inherited a lot of old practices, working practices, and they realised that nationalisation was fine, but it wasn't really working. It didn't look like a unified national railway. They realised soon that actually graphic design, although the weakest point, could be the strongest point. Graphic design, through the means of a corporate identity that was well controlled and well applied, could actually unify everything else that they were doing in terms of design. In the early 60s, they started to address the graphics. They started with Jock Kinnear and the typeface design. They realised they needed a very modern typeface, but also one that worked technically better than the old typefaces that were being used. And at that time, they employed the Design Research Unit, who, of course, took a very modern approach to the development of a corporate identity in a way that would really demonstrate that we had a national railway for the whole country. But they realised that to actually control and to make sure that the brand, the corporate identity was being applied correctly, they had to create a set of design manuals. In that way, they could ensure that the standards were being maintained. They realised it was important, and the more they did it, the more important it became. It's important to maintain this consistent vision or this consistent presentation to the public. The public were not going to accept the railways as being a success, as being a beacon, if you like, for the way in which nationalised industries could be a success, unless the whole thing looked like it was a success. When I got to British Rail, of course, one of the first things I wanted to see was, where's the manual? I want to see the famous corporate identity that British Rail had introduced. I wanted to see just how well it applied in the modern era, how well it was still working. The corporate identity manual, it turned out, was a whole room full of filing cabinets, and in these filing cabinets there were hundreds, if not thousands, of pages, all catalogued, all numbered in the same sequence that the original design manual had established. But it demonstrated every single application of the brand. The basics that had been set in place by DRU back in the 1960s still held strong, and they still worked. Bringing things up to the present day, I think it's really fantastic that the double arrow is still seen as that mark of authority, and it is still used. We've had, 50 years to learn the symbol for railways, and again, as much as it was criticised over the years, actually now it still works. It's become part of the language, and as it was many years ago, it is part of the identity of Britain.